Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. We hope your day started well. Thanks for joining us. My name is Gay, and together with my colleagues, Naomi and Gabriella, we are orchestrating the community of practice for the Healthy Communities Initiative. We're very excited to be back with you in this new year, 2023, to host this conversation about opening streets for people. Before we start, just a couple of friendly Zoom reminders. The session's available in English and French, and to access the French interpretation, you'll see a globe at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that globe, you'll see the French channel, and you will be able to follow the session in French. Closed captions are also available in English by clicking the captions option at the bottom of your screen. With the purpose of making this session as interactive as possible, Gabriella will also share a notes document with you in the chat, where you can share a bit about your projects, your contact information, and we'll be taking notes there, so please make that space yours. And to warm up this virtual room where we all find ourselves, if you haven't already shared your name and where you're joining from, we would love to see that. We want to open this space by recognizing the ongoing impacts of colonization and the fact that reconciliation is an ongoing commitment in all of us. We are very grateful to live, congregate, learn, and work in the community on this territory. And as community builders, we commit to taking care of the land and the beings with whom we share it. I'm joining today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations, whose relationship with the land continues to this day on the Pacific coast in the city of Vancouver. CUI's work happens across Turtle Island, which has traditionally been and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Before presenting today's panelists, we are very glad to be joined today also by our colleagues from Community Foundations of Canada, Yom and Haley. So over to you, Haley.
Hi, thank you so much, Gay. Yeah, like Gay said, my name is Haley. I'm joining in from the beautiful and traditional unceded territory of the Wissanic and the Kwangin-speaking peoples, also known as Victoria, BC. So I'm a project officer supporting the Healthy Communities Initiative. My colleague Yom and we are primarily doing the same work. However, she supports our French-speaking projects. So we're so excited to be here today because we're often on the back end of things, working on the administration and all those pieces. So it's fun to be a part of this community in this way. So thanks, Kay. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you so much. We're so glad to have you. Today, we are delighted to open this session about open streets and open communities, hosted by one of our Healthy Communities partners, Jiya Benny, who's also a mentor in the Healthy Communities Mentorship Program. We're excited today about today's session, which we somewhat started planning in the summertime when all the street activities were happening around us. It just inspired us about all the different placemaking approaches and opportunities. And we recognize that these things take time to plan. So we're opening this discussion in January. As we're here to talk about open streets, we also took the opportunity to extend the invitation to participants of My Main Street, which is a $23 million investment to help drive business and restore vibrancy to local communities across Southern Ontario in the aftermath of COVID-19. This is done by the Federal Development Agency of Southern Ontario and CUI. So together with Jiya, we are joined with two fantastic panelists, Christy, who will share with us her experiences with the Roebuck Street Open Street program, which is located in the heart of downtown Brooklyn in the town of Whitby, connecting with the town of Whitby, which has been possible thanks to our colleagues at My Main Street. So thank you, Christy, for joining us. And Tracy from Alberta who's from the organization Ever Active Schools, and Tracy will be sharing their experiences with the project Activating Community Play, which was a Healthy Communities initiative. So welcome to all of you. After the presentation and discussion with panelists, Naomi from our team will jump on to facilitate a question period from the audience. So please feel free to add your questions and thoughts to the chat or to the shared document at any point, and we'll collect them for the Q&A. This is all from our side, so over to you, Jiya.
Thank you so much, Kay, for that introduction. Excited to start this today. So let me share my screen. There we go. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today called Open Streets, Open Communities, Reclaiming Streets for People. Today, we will talk about different approaches to reclaiming streets for people. We also have Christy and Tracy, and we'll talk to them about how they open their streets to their communities. So to introduce myself, my name is Jiya Benny. I am a project manager at 880 Cities. For those of you who don't know 880 Cities, we are a nonprofit organization based in Toronto. Our mission is to ignite action and challenge the status quo to create healthier, more equitable and sustainable cities for all people. And we are guided by one very basic question, that is, what if everything we did in our cities was great for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old? Then it would be great for everyone. And for this, we have 3 key ingredients to do this. We call these the 3 rights. First one is the right to mobility, which states that every resident has a right to move in and around their neighborhood and their city in a way that is safe, healthy, affordable, and sustainable. We also have the right to public space, which states that every resident has the right to accessible, safe, and well-maintained public parks and public spaces that can offer high-quality programs and activities. Lastly, we have right to participate, which states that every resident has the right to participate in decision-making processes that affect their quality of life and sense of belonging in public space. As you can see, the topic of open streets is very much connected to all these rights. But before we get into the presentation, we wanted to know what brings you to today's session. So our topic today is open streets. And we have, yes, the poll is on the screen. So yeah, tell us what brings you to today's session. Are you planning an open street event for spring, summer 2023? Have you planned an open street in the past? Do you participate in open streets in your community? Are you just here to learn and be inspired? Or do you enjoy healthy community initiatives, mob sessions, and you try to attend them to learn more about placemaking? And if there's anything else, please share through the chat. So you have 15 more seconds to participate in the poll, everyone. That's amazing. So most of you are here to learn and be inspired. You have, some of you have planned an open street event in the past. Some of you are planning one for this spring and summer. Some of you participate in your open street programs in your community. And in the chat, there is Carol from Access to Accessibility, developing a local research study on inclusion and micromobility. That's amazing. Advocating to make the Young Complete Street pilot permanent. Amazing. Thanks, everyone. All right, so I will begin my presentation. And I just want to start off by reminding ourselves why we reclaim streets. So firstly, streets are our largest, most accessible public spaces. Many neighborhoods don't have access to parks, and even if they do, parks don't always provide a level surface for those on wheelchairs. Closing down streets to cars and opening it up to people encourages physical activity like walking and cycling. It encourages community connection by providing a space for people to come together. It boosts local businesses. When you have more people walking and cycling on a street, it encourages local businesses. Last, but definitely not the least, it disrupts the notion that streets are only for cars and other vehicles. But that it is also for people. So I will go over some approaches to reclaiming streets. So here we have two pictures. The first one is a picture of the Kitchener pop-up park that 880 Cities implemented with the city of Kitchener in Kitchener. So we closed off a block of King Street in front of the Kitchener City Hall and opened it up for the community to play, pray, and connect with each other. And we did this by creating a pop-up park. The goal of this was to build excitement and engage diverse communities in reimagining parks and public spaces. The second image you see on the screen is an image of Taste of Little Italy, which is a street festival in Toronto. And you might all be familiar with street festivals. And usually the main purpose of these street festivals is to encourage local businesses and restaurants by giving them space on the street to sell their goods and promote their businesses. But it's also a great way for the community to come together. You can also reclaim streets with a simple goal of providing space for people to walk, like this example in Whitby, which we'll hear more about, and then this example in St. John's in Newfoundland. Other approaches include school streets and play streets. So school streets is a program that opens up streets in front of schools to children, their caregivers and teachers so that they can walk, bike, and roll to school without fear of being hit by a vehicle. Whereas a play street is opening up of the street in residential neighborhoods for kids to play on. And then there is the open street program. So these are pictures from open street programs in San Jose and Toronto. In San Jose, they temporarily closed 6 miles of streets to bring communities together to walk, bike, skate, and play. This picture was taken in 2015, and that was the inaugural Open Streets event, and they had their previous one, or the latest one, in 2022. In Toronto, they temporarily closed 5 kilometers of streets, and if you're familiar with Toronto, it runs on Yonge and Bloor. And the goal of these open street program is to promote physical activity and explore the city in fun and healthy ways. And along the route, there would be activity hubs that are programmed by members of the surrounding community. So we went through a bunch of ways in which you can reclaim streets. And what sets these apart is the goal of the street reclamation. Is it to provide a space for play? Is it to encourage physical activity? Is it to encourage local businesses? And depending on your goal, the way you reclaim streets will look different. In our experience, there are 4 ingredients that you can use that, if it's included in your open street program, will increase the benefits of the program. So one is an iconic route, one is a route length, one is a timing, and one is regular frequency. So I'll go over each one of them now. So first one is iconic route. So imagine an iconic route like the Park Avenue in New York City or the Paseo de la Reforma in Mexico City. And there is something special about being able to walk on these kind of streets, which are normally reserved for vehicles. So, and that's what makes this program special. So first ingredient is to pick an iconic or recognizable route. And sometimes the iconic street in your city might not be the most equitable street in your city. So then feel free to choose a neighborhood where you want to implement this, and then choose street that is iconic to that neighborhood. And this main route or street will act as a spine of your open street program. And then from there, you can branch out and connect to different neighborhoods or different destinations in your city or community. Second is the route length. So in our experience, we found that for cities larger than 250,000 people, 10 kilometers is the ideal one, is the ideal length. And for cities with less than 250,000 people, 5 kilometers would be an ideal length. And you have to make sure that you connect your route with both high and low density neighborhoods, a mix of housing types and income levels, if you want to see, a high impact of the project or the program. And also note that shorter routes may work for people who are walking, But people who are cycling may easily lose interest if they can ride end to end in 10 to 15 minutes. So if that is a priority for you, make sure your route is longer than that. Third one is timing. So we find that if the programs run for at least a minimum of 4 hours in duration, then we are able to attract a wider variety of users. Like for older adults, mornings are a better time, but you would attract larger crowds in the afternoon. Businesses are also more active in the afternoon. So make sure that the timing of your event can attract all these different audiences. As far as day of the week is concerned, Sunday is a day when vehicular traffic tends to be the lowest. So that is, so most open street programs happen on that day. But if you have places of worship on your route, it is important to include them in your discussions as well. The last ingredient is frequency. So the more regularly your open street happens, the greater the chance that people will be active on other days, and greater the chance you have of changing people's habits. Again, if that's the goal of your open street program. So now that I've gone over a few approaches on reclaiming streets and some ideas on how to maximize benefits, if you have planned and executed an open street, have you had challenges? Like, if so, we would like to hear about that, and we could even discuss that later on. So if you've had any challenges, please let us know through the chat. It would be great to hear from all of you. That's a great one, Teresa. So I also wanted to show you this OpenStreets toolkit that we have. It's available on openstreetsproject.org. And yeah, on the toolkit, there are different sections, but a lot of the time, like, things like people complaining, it's best to engage people as early as possible, to include them in the process, to, so that they have, so that they're able to be involved in the planning process itself. So I'll just quickly go over the toolkit. So we have a section on the toolkit called Getting Started. This section has key steps on how to get things rolling. It includes building a strong team, developing your vision, pitching your idea, and some evidence to support your pitch. There is a section called Plan Your Route. So as I mentioned, it's one of the key ingredients that will determine the impact of your program. And then there is also about funding your program, which is super important, as you might all know. This section has ideas and potential funders and how to build a sponsorship package. And then there is marketing. So you planned your route, secured funding, but you need people to come to your open street. So this section includes tips on how to market your open street, right from the ideation stage to the day of. And always remember to always take great photos and videos to promote your event the next time. There is a section called logistics, and this includes tips on volunteers, so their roles and responsibilities, how to train them, how to recruit them, how to retain them, and also on timeline. Like Gay mentioned in the beginning, we are having this conversation now so that you can plan for something in the summer. So it takes a lot of time to plan these things as well. So this section has, gives you an idea about the time that you would require to plan something like this. And lastly, there's evaluation. So this is also very important, and do plan ahead, do plan ahead on how to collect data and how to evaluate your open street. Because when you go back to your funder or apply for more funding, they want to see evidence, right? So this is also very important. All right, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. But we would like to know from those of you who have participated in open streets, or any of the different kinds of street reclamation approaches that I mentioned before, or if you've participated or if you've planned, in what ways do you observe open streets contributing to a sense of belonging and well-being in your communities. Have you noticed that, and how have you noticed it? Please let us know through the chat. Any anecdotes or anything that you've observed. We would love to hear that. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will bring on Christy and Tracy. Yes, thank you for switching on your videos. So we have Gay introduced both of you, Christy and Tracy. But Christy Crust from the town of Whitby is here to talk about the Roebuck Street placemaking project, and Tracy Coates from Ever Active Schools will talk about their Play Street initiatives. So happy to have both of you here, Tracy and Christy. So let's begin. So why don't both of you introduce your projects to all the participants and all the attendees, and tell us why you chose the street as a place to bring people together.
Want me to start, Jiya?
Yes, Christy, yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Tracy, I'll jump in. So, hi, everyone. My name's Christy Crust. I'm a manager for the town of Whitby, and I have a really fun job. And I do a lot of downtown development and placemaking, and that's kind of something that's fairly new to our portfolio in our community. And we've been very, very fortunate to receive a My Main Street grant to help with this project, which was started last summer, and we're looking to continue working on it through this year as well. So Whitby is on the traditional treaty territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. And we are just outside of Toronto, for those that may not know and live in kind of the Ontario area. We're a mid-sized city, so we're about 140,000 people. And we're very fortunate to have two historic downtowns. So we have downtown Whitby and downtown Brooklyn. And both communities or downtowns have very historic buildings and kind of traditional streetscape fabric. In our case, we looked at Roebuck Street, which is just a little side street off of our main street, which is Baldwin Street, or those in Ontario may know it as Highway 12, which takes you up to Cottage Country often. So we were very fortunate because in this case, the street really only had about three businesses on it, and it was attached to an existing park, or an urban park that is in our downtown, and it really was the community gathering space for downtown Brooklyn. The park is very mature. It's got lots of beautiful large trees. It's got a pergola, and it really is that community gathering space for the town. So when we looked at it, it was kind of checking off a lot of boxes. I know someone mentioned parking and removal of parking. We only had about 3 or 4 parking spaces that were being removed. So there was some benefits for us that we had lots of other parking in and around the street. We also found that closing the road, it's an accessible surface. So it's asphalt base, which is a really great surface for all different abilities and mobility devices. And the park was already used for, Thursday night, we have Music in the Park series there. Other community groups will often rent out the park space. There was an ice cream store nearby, which in the summer is a very popular destination. We had a restaurant also on the street. So again, it was really probably in terms of the logistics, it looked like the best space for us to kind of close. And historically wise, it was also identified in some of our strategic plans that we had developed with an advisory committee of council for a number of years. They had looked at considering closing that street. So I think it met, again, all of those boxes, and we were happy enough to get the support. So.
Amazing. Thank you, Christy. Yes, Tracy.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Christy. Thank you. So through funding from the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative and in partnership with the City of Calgary, Our Streets, Our Spaces, activating community play, travel, and connection, aims to adapt and modify multiple existing public spaces, including parks, different types of residential roads, and pathways in ways that encourage safe outdoor activities and deepen connection to and understanding of the local community. Secondly, it encourages outdoor family-friendly activities that use temporary tactical urbanism interventions to make it easier for people to get around in their community using multimodal means. Thirdly, this project aims to heighten awareness of the potential and vibrancy of community spaces of which local residents may not have been aware, encouraging ongoing use of public spaces and routes throughout the year. This project, through this project, community members in 3 Calgary communities, New Brighton, Rundle, and Scenic Acres, will be given multiple opportunities to contribute to the creation of safe and vibrant public spaces and improve active transportation routes along a 2-kilometer route or loop. The benefit of creating this experience with community members include encouragement of active travel that is supported through temporary traffic calming, outdoor learning and exploration, building community capacity through a joint initiative, and an invitation to community members to experience change and understand the potential in their neighborhood. The 3 communities selected are located in 3 of Calgary's 4 geographical quadrants. And selection of these communities, so each of these communities has at least one active and safe routes to school project being implemented with potential to involve or invite many school communities, a minimum of 8 for our project, within walking distance of the activation corridors. This tactic provides us with some knowledge of that community. So this is a project that Ever Active Schools also implements in partnership and funded through the City of Calgary. So this tactic provides us with some knowledge of that community, such as level of engagement of the school community or communities we're working in, the community associations of local community partners, community layouts, traffic patterns, as well as, and probably most important too for this project, barriers to active transportation and community play. So why we chose a street-oriented approach to bringing people together. So this is important. So street sidewalks and multi-use pathways connect us all to each other. We all use this infrastructure at one time or another, whether we're crossing as a pedestrian or a person using a wheelchair, cycling on them, driving on them, parking on them, playing street hockey on them, etc. To our lives, they are important, and we need to understand how to share them safely and effectively. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And, you know, from something that both of you said, there was already, so Tracy, in Calgary's case, there was already an existing culture of active school travel in those areas. So yeah. It is, I don't want to say it's not challenging, but it's less challenging to implement something there. And Christy, in Whitby, you know, the street that you chose was already attached to a park that has, you know, high usage. So there is already interest in that area. So and that's something that we've also noticed, to pick a location that is least challenging, especially if it's, you know, if it's still a new concept, so that you can convince people that this actually works, and then go on to the harder locations later on. But when you start off, you know, do it in a location that's not that challenging. And so Tracy, your project is will happen in the future, right?
Yes.
Is I get that right? Okay.
Yeah. So we have 3 activation loops. That one is scheduled for April, the other the next in May, and then June of 2023.
Yeah. Okay. So you must be in the throes of planning now.
We are in the throes of planning. Yes.
Yeah. Amazing. And so and Christy, you can reflect back on your planning process, and you're planning ahead as well. But could you tell us what the process is like in bringing a project like this to life? You know, maybe, you know, like from the permit process, or, you know, engaging the community, the volunteer recruitment, or, you know, please, yeah, we would like to hear about that. And if there were some challenges, we would like to hear about that as well.
Grace, you want to go first on this one?
Sure, I can go first.
Sure.
Yeah, so just as it's been stated, we are in the throes of planning these activation routes right now. But luckily for us, we are working with schools on the Active and Safe Routes to School program in these communities. So what that provides for us is some information about how families are traveling around those communities and any barriers to active transportation. And those barriers include anything from weather, distance, age of child, but most importantly, like spaces within that community where it's really hard to get around as an active traveler, whether you're a wheeler or a walker. So like that helps with the planning. So, and having a partner such as the City of Calgary is also important. But of course, for these projects, we need to engage the community associations or residents associations, local cycle shops, and other partners who are going to be integral to this project to help us carry out those activation stations. But the very first thing we do when we're, you know, in selection of community is to see, because we need champions who can step forward, and just as has been said, start in locations where it's relatively easy and then move on to locations where it's going to be a little bit more challenging. So in these communities, we know that we have like a solid foundation built in our active school travel work. And we also know some of the desires of the community association. So for example, in the community of New Brighton, we know that they have an extensive pathway system. However, it is underused because it is so extensive that people somewhat get lost on it. So we know that we need to, for that project, we will be working with the city and community association to set up some wayfinding along that pathway system, and that will be included in our activation corridor.
Yeah,
Did I answer the whole question?
Yes, you did. And we will come to challenges after.
Great.
Like it was a two-part question, but we can come to challenges later. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just going to add on your word champion, and I saw Gay put it in the chat as well, because that was definitely something we did. So our project, for some background, it was implemented last summer. I love the term pilot projects. I think everyone does on this chat. It really allows you to test the waters for things and do some lessons learned and really be a change agent without maybe making a permanent change. Because I think a lot of people are very, very hesitant to change. And I think that's just human nature. So for us, when we looked at the street, we actually started our planning in summer of 2021. Can you believe it? Which we had a couple of champions. So we, as I mentioned, we had a Brooklyn steering committee, which is an advisory committee of our council. And a couple of the members and myself went out that summer, and we actually met with the businesses on that street, because obviously they're the ones that are going to be the most impacted by a road closure. And we met on site, we chatted with them, we kind of gave them some options. So we talked about, do you want to see the road closed for a couple of weekends in the summer? Do you want to see it closed for 1 or 2 months? So we had that open discussion and that dialogue well in advance of the road closure, just to get their thoughts and their feedback. And it also gave us really a good opportunity to talk about any of the logistical things that would probably come to head with a road closure and trying to do a project like this. So for example, one was a restaurant and one was an ice cream shop, and they both get deliveries weekly. So we talked about the size of the delivery truck that they use. In both cases, they weren't the large transport trucks, but they were the smaller trucks. So we wanted to make sure that they had a spot to deliver. So we talked to them about the logistics of where the delivery drivers could go. We also know that they put their waste in front of the curb. So it's town, waste pickup. So we talked to them about possibly relocating their waste further down, whether that was an opportunity. And again, had conversations with their waste services department. And they were also okay with the location of the pickup. It could fit their truck to come in and out. So the logistical things and that advanced planning, I think, really helps to kind of mitigate some of the challenges that may come forward after you actually implement a project. And I also think it creates a lot of that buy-in, and then you get champions, and you also build those relationships with, to your point, Tracy, with some of those community activators that you want to engage with as you're doing your project. So having the relationship with the Brooklyn Steering Committee members and then developing a relationship with those business members for myself was really key to get that buy-in early and have that open dialogue with the project, so that when we did finally close the road, I think about a month ahead of closing the road, we had, our operations had signs about road closure. We also hand-delivered postcards to all the businesses in the downtown about that, but as well as other events that were coming up, because we haven't had events for a couple of years, just reminding them of some of the things that we were doing in our downtown. And, again, that's open dialogue. We created the Connect Whitby page that I think has been shared. And it really helps to kind of navigate and get ahead of maybe some of those things that you think are going to be a challenge down the road. So
that's some super great points, Christy. Like we heard champions, advanced planning, relationships, all of those, are important. And that feedback loop also, like we hear you and we've taken this into consideration and this is what we're thinking, and to actively involve them in that planning process. But in spite of all this, did either of you have challenges? Just curious to hear about that.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah, there are always challenges because there's multiple organizations who contribute to, because these are big projects, like for our project, like these play corridors are going to be open 3 to 4 days, so from like a Wednesday to a Saturday. So you have multiple organizations who are going to be contributing. So of course you have to agree on what activations and with Ever Active Schools in the city of Calgary, through the Active and Safe Routes to School program, we can inform on locations that have been highlighted in family travel surveys as being problematic in the community. So that's great. But of course, community associations, they are invested in those communities. So they want to make sure that, that the voice of the community is being heard as well. So there's a lot of negotiation, a lot of discussion as to what is going to serve this community the best. So that's one. And then like staffing, like when you have a multi-day event happening, it's inviting even more partners in to make sure that the activation stations that need to be staffed, like be it a traditional Indigenous games where we're going to be, that's for the Scenic Acres loop, that's going to be one of the stations that we have someone there who can actually teach it. So those are just some of the challenges that we are, just as Christy said, that we are planning ahead for and making sure that we have all of that taken care of.
I think one of the challenges we had, and it's more of an internal challenge, because I think we did enough pre-planning that I feel like we got some of the challenges we thought we might face. They didn't seem to come up, but for us was part of the project included a road mural that was designed by local artists, and we came up with the idea that the mural would say Brooklyn in these big huge letters, and each letter would be painted by a local artist. And we don't have a public art policy. We have never done a jury panel with artists before. We don't know what type of paint to use on the road mural. So that's that activation piece. When you're looking at closing a road, you can't just close a road and not do anything for it. You need to really activate it and create a sense of place. And that's that whole placemaking part. So for us, it was doing, and I was very fortunate, I had a great summer student last year, and she was amazing at researching the types of paint to use, because we didn't want it to be permanent. We knew the road was going to open back up after the 2 months that it was closed. So, what are the types of paint we use? How do we collect? How do we develop a jury panel? How do we do a call for artists? So things like that, like the smaller logistic things were lessons learned for us, but I think a really exciting experience too that we're now able to use and build upon as we look at what we're going to do this summer. And it did create a bit of buzz because artists were excited. Like I'm proud to say we had an all-women artist team, 6 women, different ages, abilities, backgrounds, cultures. And it was so fabulous because they were working on their mural for about a week before, as the space was closed. And it was great. The community came out, they were watching the artists paint their letters. They were talking to the artists, what is happening? a couple days, I was very fortunate. I had a hard job of actually working from the space. Luckily we had Wi-Fi there, and I was able to set up and just watch and observe as people came in. And once the road was closed and the artists were there, and it was amazing. Like the look on people's faces when they came and all of a sudden they saw that the road was closed. What's happening here? What is the town doing? What's going on? And it's that buzz and that excitement that I think the community really was drawn to, and it helped the downtown businesses too really got behind it and supported it as well. So
yeah. And that, like, I couldn't agree more. So like processes in Calgary, such as, if we're planning on, and I know we're planning on painting the pavement in all 3 communities, whether it's a sidewalk or a shared pathway or multi-use trail, like that's a process. Like you have to complete the right paperwork, get the right permit. But just as Christy said, is that it's the setup of these projects that creates a ton of hype around them, because suddenly something's changing in a neighborhood, and you have neighbors coming out and wondering what's happening. And it's probably some of the best promotion that you'll do for that event, because from there, the word spreads. It's like, come and see what they're doing to this sidewalk. It's absolutely awesome. And it gets people excited because it's different and it's new and it's fun.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just thinking that too. It's the greatest promotion you can get. the planning process, that transformation process. And instead of thinking of it as, oh, you're taking away my parking spot or taking away my lane, my vehicle lane, it's it's this fun thing that's happening. So it also helps in making people understand what it's actually going to be at the end. Tracy, when you had staffing you mentioned staffing challenges, are you thinking about volunteer recruitment? Are you thinking of getting volunteers for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very lucky to have a 4-member active school travel facilitation team in Calgary. So along with myself, that's 5 of us, and that's for the planning and coordination of and the oversight of these events. But we will definitely be reaching out to community associations, to local businesses, to local youth groups to help with the staffing of those activation stations. So yes.
Okay, that's amazing. And if you think about how your initiative, contributed to making your city or town more livable, and Tracy, maybe this is a futuristic question for you. How do you think it would contribute to making Calgary more livable? And Christy, how does it make Whitby more livable?
Christy, did you want to go first?
Sure. We're so polite, eh? So Canadian.
I know.
We had a survey. So part of the project involved, a QR code. QR codes have made a comeback, and it was a great way for people to engage. We had the ice cream store was fabulous. They put out little A-frame signs every day with the QR code, took them in at night. They were so great to work with. And we had about 180 people provided responses in the survey. And I'd say about 93% were so excited about the project. They wanted to see the project happen again. They loved it. So that's amazing feedback for us, because we wanted to make sure it was successful, because again, that's that change agent. When you're trying to do these types of things, you want them to be successful and you want them to thrive. So for us, in terms of how does it make our city more livable, the comments and feedback we got, a lot of parents commented on the fact that it was such a safe space for their kids, especially they'd go down, they'd take their bike, go down for ice cream in the evening, and their kids could cross the street and go to the park and not worry about traffic. So that was a huge bonus for parents. They just felt like, I think a sense of relief that there was that opportunity for their children to play safely in that area. We had more activations in the space. So our Thursday Night Music in the Park series had double the volume of people that would normally come out to it. We had people using the space for impromptu meetings, office workers in the area. I did get some stats from the businesses, and the ice cream stores indicated that they had a 15% sales increase year over year. So there's some great economic contributions to that. For me personally, I think I created great collaborations with our business community that I hadn't had before. So that was a really nice bonus from that professional standpoint. And I think just that general excitement and atmosphere that was created with the space, something new, something different, and the community loved it. And that's, you know, what you want to do. You want to create spaces that people want to be in, and people like to be around people. So it's a nice space for people to enjoy.
Yeah, it's that whole community connection piece. Yeah.
Awesome.
Tracy, what about you?
Yeah, so like as I've said multiple times, is that this project is really an extension of the Active and Safe Routes to School. So although the target, of course, is the entire community, the neighborhood that we're hosting these open spaces events in, but it's like as part of the activations, you know, it's like we're focusing on like pedestrian safety. So how to cross the street safely, how to improve crossings for everyone, right? So like, and there'll be temporary tactical urbanism with, you know, some bump outs and so forth, just so that those people living in that community can see what it would be like if, you know, temporary traffic calming curbs were added at a particular intersection to support crossing of, you know, our most vulnerable road users, as you said, those, you know, 8 years old, those 80 years old. You know, it's got to be planned for that. So we like for these projects to be to complement the work that we're already doing. So if we already know that there are issues in the community with safety at a certain intersection, with you know, young people or families not wearing bike helmets or not knowing how to and not knowing how to ride on a shared pathway, even something as simple as stay to the right, you know, getting that messaging across. All of that goes into these projects, and we like to do the add along with the fun stuff. We like to put the education pieces in there because they're so important, because at the bottom line, we'd like for everybody in that community to understand how to travel as actively and safely in that community as possible, you know, having fun along the way, noticing new community spaces that they may not have ever experienced before, but now because we've set up a mindfulness station in a wooded area, suddenly they're rethinking that space. But like, it has to complement the work, because these people are living in this community. You know, this is their home. This is where they're out walking, if they're walking, or if they haven't walked before these activation corridors took place. That's great. Like, you know, this is something that introduces them to their community, but it's got to be something that connects everybody, but like fits into their daily life, so that, you know, it's not just a play street. It's not just something that's going to be set up temporarily. It's really meant to improve skills so that everybody understands how to travel as safely, however you're traveling, how to travel as safely, you know, hopefully as actively as possible, and how to engage with that community that, you are going to become more familiar with because of these projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So my next question is about how these pedestrian street spaces or active transportation spaces transition into a post-pandemic world. So Christy, your project happened in September 2022, or summer 2022. So yeah, it was already a little post-pandemic, if you want, you can say. But how would you say that it would transition into an even more open society, like an open society, if that's the right word?
Yeah, no, great question. So right now we're literally writing a report for council, and we're recommending like a semi-permanent closure for this season. Yay, I can't wait. It's so exciting because last year's pilot project for the 2 months was very successful. So we're looking at a closure kind of from June till maybe mid-September after our big Harvest Festival weekend that we have there. And I always say balance is a big thing when you look at projects like this. I know some of the comments and feedback is we'd love to see the street close all the time. Are we there? Are we ready for that yet? I don't think so. You need to do that. You really need to activate a space. And I think just the way our winters are, we found there was a bit of a drop off once, kids went back to school, the weather changed in September, like the latter part of September didn't get used as much. So when we look at it, you want to, again, create that balanced approach on how to make sure the space is successful and also how to balance the community needs as well as the business needs that are happening. Just last week, I've connected with the businesses in the area. I've chatted about this idea of, a semi-permanent closure. What are your thoughts? Do you have feedback? I got a lot of really good feedback, things that we're going to start to try and implement are, a portable washroom. One of the businesses said people were using their washroom, even though they put a sign up. So how do you mitigate that type of stuff? I met with one of the property owners yesterday morning, actually, and he showed me some pictures of people parking illegally in and around his access to his driveway. So maybe some no parking signs. So you need to look at the space and how it functioned, connect with the businesses, connect with the people, and then try and make some improvements there going forward. We're going to reactivate some of the space. So again, we're looking at a different road mural, which I think keeps the space exciting and new and interesting every year. We also want to do some really cool things. Like I found an outdoor foosball table and some cornhole games and maybe some string lights. We found people said it was a bit dark at night, some more bike racks because a lot of people bike there. So those are the improvements that we would like to make to the space. And those are things that I think help to enhance, a public space as it continues to evolve. The space is always going to evolve. And maybe at some point we'll be there for a permanent closure. Maybe that's going to be down the road in the future. But I think start small and then work towards something larger.
Yeah. And placemaking is a continuous process. You just
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And how about in Calgary, Tracy?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Christy. Is that projects such as this, although they seem temporary and it's certainly fun, but their purpose is to lead to more permanent change. So whether that's improved infrastructure at crosswalks, whether that's adding benches to public spaces where no benches currently exist. Maybe it's more bike and scooter racks, by the ice rink, because we have some winter bikers who like to use the ice rink to play hockey, and so on and so forth. But it's using these events to affect that permanent change. And as always been said, it will constantly evolve, but it brings it up to the point where people see that change happening and then they start engaging more and more and more, and that's where the evolution comes. So it starts with the town of Whitby, it starts with Ever Active Schools in the city of Calgary, but then the community takes it on its own. Different groups carry it forward along that evolution process.
Yeah, and that's what we want. There was another part of the previous question as well, is how do we ensure that, what can we do to make these streets remain open for everyone? And I'm just curious if you had, maybe seniors didn't find the space that accessible, and what are you doing for that? Or if they did find the space accessible, what was it that made it accessible for seniors? Do you have any leads or tips on that, or any takeaways from your projects on that?
So when we designed our space, we definitely, chatted with our various advisory committees. So I think I saw a comment about an accessibility advisory committee. The jury panel for the artists was actually made up of a member of our diversity committee, our accessibility committee, our heritage committee, our downtown committee. So we made sure to engage with obviously all of our groups and committees that we have. And I think, again, that leads to a successful project. With ours, we made sure when we put the concrete barriers on the road that there was an opening that was wide enough, above the town standard, looking at a 2-meter access versus, 1.5, to make sure it allows for that flow of movement. We also made sure we had an accessible picnic table in the space because we knew we wanted all user groups to use the space as well. We had different types of seating. So we had some Muskoka chairs as well that are kind of a more lounge furniture type base. We had some planters to provide, softscaping, some greenery, with the mural, again, we made sure with some of the criteria that we used is that we wanted artists that all had different abilities and backgrounds, cultures. So we had an Indigenous artist, which was lovely. We had an artist that was a member of the LGBTQ plus community. We had an artist with a disability. So, I think that alone, like, it just spoke volumes in terms of the inclusiveness of the space and how we can, there's different ways you can activate it, but different ways you can include all groups when you're planning a space. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as part of this project, and as we have done in the past, right, as we have done in the past, we've included feedback from the City of Calgary's accessibility team, so that, and as well as the inclusion team, equity inclusion team from Ever Active Schools, to make sure that these, the pathways, multi-way sidewalks, streets are open for everybody. So a very good example of this would be, like, we include a wheelchair, like a portion, like one activation station will include multiple wheelchairs that students can use, and for some it's the first time they've ever had to use a wheelchair, mechanical wheelchairs, so they can feel what it's like to wheelchair in those spaces, up and down curbs, like on narrow sidewalks when you're trying to pass. Like in April, we might have snow. So trying to navigate a chair in snow. So it's really eye-opening for not just students, but all community members who get to use those like pieces of equipment such as that, because it might look easy from afar, but once they try it out for themselves to get that hands-on, they realize how difficult it is, and then they take that information with them as they, perhaps they'll be part of the planning committee for the next Open Streets event, right? So that's how they, that's how we like to grow these projects and keep them open for everybody.
Nice, amazing. Thank you both, Tracy and Christy. I will now pass it to Naomi for final questions and remarks.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you, Jiya and Christy and Tracy. It's been a delight and so valuable to hear everything you shared today. We've had a ton of questions in the chat, so I will ask a few of them. I think some of them were actually touched on just in some of what you both gave in terms of the answers there, and anything that we don't get to today, we will also get to or try our best to respond to in follow-up. So that's just there. Also, thank you everyone for staying on, for another 15 minutes. We know some of you might have to leave for 2 o'clock meetings, but we really like to make the space for carrying on such a rich discussion. So thank you. So this is one, and I don't know how much sort of it affects you. I know you both have relationships to your cities that are pretty tight. But Sue asked in the chat if your city charges you a fee in order to close the street down. She mentions that in Halifax she had to pay quite a significant amount. So it's not always as sustainable.
Maybe I'll start. So because it was a town project, we didn't have a fee. Maybe there's the benefit of doing some work that way. But say, for example, if our downtown Whitby BIA business improvement area were to close the road for an open streets or an event of that nature, there would be fees. So usually, and it's related to the staff cost to close the road because it has to be all done legitimately through, I think it's called Book 7. And so there's certain ways that you have to close roads safely. So there is fees to those types of kind of event-oriented street closures. And again, it depends also on the size of the event, the size of the closure, what side streets are closed, and again, your other approvals. So in Brooklyn, for example, Highway 12 is owned by our provincial government here, MTO. And when even the town closes that road for Harvest Festival, we have to pay to close the road, and we have to make sure we have OPP. So there is logistics, even when, you know, it's not a town road, you do have to take those factors into consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have the same feedback. So the city of Calgary, because they are a partner in this project, they do cover the permit fees for road closures and other permits that we need. However, just to be on the side of caution, we did build those into our project budget. So if there is a change of heart in that, like, we are prepared. So that's a great question.
And Jiya, and thank you both for those answers. I think they're really insightful for sort of mentioning some of the other costs that also come into the process. And Jiya, I'll also sort of pose the question to you, because I know you've done so much work with AD Cities with Open Streets initiatives. Do you have any sort of reflections on cost and managing those pieces when it comes to Open Streets?
Yeah, I mean, it's always like what we've noticed is when we don't have the city as a partner, it's difficult to get the permits and the process and everything. But having a city as a partner is always beneficial, and that it might cut down costs if that's how, you know, it'll depend on the project as well. You know, sometimes there would be a cost even if the city, like how Christy was saying, but that can help reduce cost. But it's also building that into the budget from the beginning, you know, anticipating that, foreseeing that. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's my
Thank
2
you all.
cents.
Yeah. And so I'm going to move on to a slightly different question. Now, Teresa asked sort of a specific question to, I would say, farmers markets and sort of the frequency around what's too frequent or what isn't frequent enough. And I guess this is a question sort of I'll pose more generally. Do you find that there is sort of a limit of like, this is too much activation, or this is like, I mean, obviously, sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge to get it as much as one wants, but I'm sort of curious about that time balance piece.
So Whitby has 2 farmers markets. We have one in each of our downtowns. We have one in downtown Whitby, which is on a Wednesday. And then there was such demand up in Brooklyn that we were very fortunate that our Farmers Market Association agreed to have one on Saturdays. And we did not choose right in our downtown because, again, it's an MTO provincial road, so it's hard for us to close that road. We needed a little bit more space than maybe the Roebuck Street could possibly provide. Plus, it was a pilot project last year, but once a week, I think, because a lot of my understanding with farmers markets working with our group is they don't only just go to yours, they go to a different market every day. And so often they're very busy vendors, and then they also have to farm on top of that. So, and you know, I think generally if you can get once a week, that would be ideal for your community.
Yeah, and as for our project, which is a little bit different, of course, we actually create a map with all, like where the activations are going to be happening along the corridor. So whether you're a teacher who's taking a class out to enjoy the loop, or whether you're a resident who's just enjoying it, like after school hours or on the weekend, like, you know what you want to see. So if you're not up to walking or wheeling the 2 kilometers, you can go to the stations that you want to engage with. So like we like to make sure that there's a wide variety for all who are living in that community. So that map has really been helpful. So and that was the feedback that we received from the Panorama Hills Panorama Neighborhood Streets Lab, is that school staff really wanted to know where the activations were happening, because they wanted to target them to support curriculum that they were teaching in their classes, to align with curriculum rather.
Amazing. I think those are both great approaches. Jiya, I don't know if you had anything else to sort of answer. Otherwise, I'm happy to ask the next question. Amazing. And I saw Shannon had replied a bit to this question that was posed. But do any of you know of any solid data that exists around the impact of car-free roads on businesses? And now I know, you know, with the Play Streets and with the Open Streets Initiative from 880 cities, there's some data in there. And I know, Christy, you've gotten some very tangible data in terms of, how the ice cream shop and the restaurants and surrounding businesses have sort of seen benefit to that. But I was curious if there were any more ways in which to sort of gain some of that data or access it.
I know for the Panorama Hills, it's actually on the City of Calgary website, so please check it out. And as well for Edmonton's Open Streets event that they held in 2020. COVID, like everybody, COVID is a blur. So I'm happy to get that and share that with you. But there is data that the organizing group Has for People has shared.
I don't know. Jiya, do you have anything else to add? I don't know much more I have to add.
Yeah, I was just, no, I think I'll have to get back on that, because I mean, I know that there are studies on like bike lanes improve businesses on streets. So, yeah, I think there should be something on our website, but I will have to check and I will share that with you.
Yeah, we're happy to share back any resource, and just so everyone knows, yeah, any resources that have both been shared or that we get after the fact, we will share as follow-up. So, and again, the same with some of the questions we don't get to today. Being cognizant of time, I'll maybe just ask a couple more questions before sort of closing things out. Some of them a little more tangible, like for example, when it comes to like street and sidewalk painting projects, materials. What are the go-tos that you go? I think it came up that you have to pick the right one. So
yes, we used an acrylic. I can definitely give that the type of paint. I think it was DeSera's. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. And it was wonderful. We actually my student tested it on her own property about a couple of weeks before, because we wanted to see if it held up in rain, because that was our biggest concern, and also for accessibility, making sure it's non-slip, that type of stuff. So our operations staff had some fine, I don't even know what they call it, really fine grit that they use when they put it on their stop bars. So they gave us some of that, which we gave to our artists to ask them to kind of spread it out as they're painting to help with some of the non-slip stuff. But it was an acrylic based paint, and I would say, so when we had the road closed for August, end of July, August, and September. It reopened in October, and I was up yesterday and the mural's completely gone. So, which is kind of what we wanted. So I can definitely share the type of paint we use, but lots, I would say that's probably the best option if you're looking for something that's not going, if you want it to be removable down the road. So.
Yeah, and for Calgary, of course, this is specified in the Paint the Pavement, in the paperwork for Paint the Pavement. So you have to apply for that permit, and you have to use a water-based outdoor latex paint, and you have to send in like visuals as to what that sidewalk or what that pathway is going to look like. And just as Christy said, like they have to be fall apart. They can't further apart, like it can't be one solid block, because that would be too slippery for those who are walking. But one thing I will say, it is temporary, and they say, it's going to last probably 3 to 4 months, at the most. But we painted a painted pedway along the Northmount Drive in Calgary. That was in 2018, and some of those footprints are still there. So I'm happy to say.
Well, I think, yeah, 209. So I think this is going to be my last question, sort of combining one of the questions in the chat as well as sort of a more general question we had, which is, I mean, what is something that you are personally excited for? And I will pose it to all three of you. But also someone had sort of mentioned what are some great ideas for activating the street. And I think you've all given really great ways to think about. But I think if there's one that sort of is exciting that you're thinking about, as you sort of think about those next steps, would love to hear that as well. And then we'll sort of conclude after that and send us all.
Did you I'm happy to start. So like some of the ones that are really exciting for us is the wayfinding project on the new Brighton pathway system, because that community has been working towards that for quite some time. So we're very happy to be able to work with them to bring it to fruition. That will increase active travel, like and keep it safe, right? Because it's a pathway system. Of course, we'll add some education and how to share pathways properly, how to travel safely on, as a pedestrian, as a wheeler. And another one with scenic acres, because these are, new and upcoming, is just like mindful stations where, things that, are, of course, promote good mental health, and it is something that is going to be accessible to all. So those are just a couple of the activation stations that we're pretty excited about.
I would say for us, this is kind of our second placemaking project. We had one in downtown Whitby the year before, which again, thank you, My Main Streets. It was another grant that we received. So we're very, very fortunate for that. But I think for me, it's nice to see the success of these projects and that they can happen in communities, and that people really enjoy the places. And for me, they're my passion projects. I would say I love seeing people out in a community enjoying a space, and all of the work that you did behind it to make it successful. Some of the things, like I mentioned earlier, the foosball table, I think will be really fun. We're also looking at doing some activations on the streets for kids. So maybe leapfrog, hopscotch. I saw some stuff on picnic tables where you can paint snakes and ladders and people can use that kind of thing. So little activations like that can kind of make a difference. And one of the comments we got was the barriers we used were kind of concrete barriers and really ugly. And so we want to paint those too, just to brighten the space up. Paint can go a long way. So as much as you can to create colorful spaces, I think helps.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I will add from that we learned from the Panorama Hill, something as simple as milk crates. So Jen Maltzer, who's the project lead on behalf of the city of Calgary for this project, like she got her hands on about 100 milk crates and everybody loved them. It became just like a huge, like a Lego piece where people were just building what they wanted for absolutely free and just having a heyday. So something as simple like that to throw into your community for kids just to have fun, for community members just to have fun, it's really heartening, because it's they're just looking for something different to really engage with.
Amazing. And Jiya, yeah, pass it to you.
Yeah. I can talk about two things that we did a lot of things in Kitchener, but two things that stood out for me. One was we had a fire pit on the street. So we had a park and then a fire pit on top. So we had a opening ceremony and a closing ceremony by an elder, and the fire pit just went on the whole day. And that was a really great, attraction for people to come and sit there and speak to each other and everything. And it really, forces you to rethink how these spaces or what these spaces can do and can have. The other thing that we did at Kitchener was also having a space and time to pray. So on that Friday afternoon, the imam from the local mosque came, and it was a time for prayer for the Muslim community. So that also really challenged, our notion of what can happen in a public space. And I thought those two were very powerful.
It's amazing. I think it's all of it is so powerful, and it's so wonderful to hear all of the ways that people are getting creative and excited and continue to generate that in their community. So again, I just want to say a big thank you to all three of you for joining us, and to everyone who's joined on the call, and as well for the attendees. This has been, the chat has just been so active. And again, if we didn't get a chance to get to your questions, we will do our best to follow up. Before going, I just have a couple final pieces to say, which is, again, thank you. We will hopefully be hosting another mobilizer session within the next month or two. So keep an eye on your inboxes for when that comes in, as well. If you're interested in, keeping up to date with what's happening with the Health Communities Initiative, as well as Canada's Placemaking Community, which is a site for platforming and connecting placemaking projects across the country. We sort of offer that space and hope you check it out. We do also have a newsletter you can sign up for, and we do try to share in that newsletter materials, pieces, items that might be of interest to people who have seen the session. So again, check that. And a final note, we will follow up, but you'll see when you close the session that there is an option to do a survey. If you are able, we really appreciate getting as much feedback as possible. For French language speakers, you can find the link to the French survey in the description of that link. So thank you so much again. We're so grateful to be in this community with you. Tracy, Christy, Jiya, thank you so much. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much. That was fun.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.